My name is Brock, and this is the Dungeon Master's Toolkit Podcast.
On today's episode, I am joined by Michael with over 2 decades of experience in the tabletop space. We talk about running games at major conventions, some information about running multi table games, and a little bit on improvisation and just a bunch of other great topics along the way. So grab your dice, gather your notes, and join us as we embark on this journey with Michael. Welcome, everybody. Today I have Michael with me. Welcome, Michael.
Hey mate, how's it going?
It is going good. Michael, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the tabletop role playing space?
Yeah, so my name's Michael. I got into the tabletop role playing space, about 20 years ago. Got introduced to it by a friend I used to work with, played some 3.5 D&D, met his group and went from there. Done a whole Played in a whole bunch of 3.5 campaigns, some Vampire the Masquerade, and a few other ones because the GM we had was very into homebrewing and trying different stuff. Then about 10 years ago, I got into Pathfinder and I started playing Pathfinder Society at a local gaming store, transitioned into GMing the Pathfinder Society, which led me to I did the PAX Oz conventions for a number of years, like running demos, like for 8 hours a day for 3 days straight. So that was really a big trial by fire for me on how to run games, how to deal with different personalities, that sort of stuff. So it was exhausting, but exhilarating at the same time.
Are there
And
are there
then, yeah,
any like big tips that you learned from that? Because yeah, that is a long time to be running games.
oh yeah, absolutely. Staying hydrated is definitely one of them. Making sure you set yourself breaks and you stick to them, so you have time to rest and recharge. What I tended to do was, yes, we had the Pathfinder rule set there, but I tended to skirt around some of the more complicated ones because you only had an hour to sort of demo something. And a lot of the people that were coming past the tables were very new, like always wanted to play, never had any friends and stuff like that. So always just keep it cool, keep it casual, keep it fun. Don't let the rules lawyers bog you down and sort of just get straight into the action sort of straight away as fast as you can. That's what I sort of learned. Then after that, transitioned into doing some online gaming, running some online games, and yeah, and then then finally I started playing 5e about 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm a bit behind in fifth edition, but in terms of gameplay and stuff, my style set tends to be more towards the rules cruncher side of things. So that's why I sort of gravitated towards Pathfinder. But when I stumbled across ICRPG, I was in a place of wanting to try something a bit lighter, a bit more fun, and yeah, I saw Hank's YouTube channel, and yeah, and that's when I fell in love with ICRPG.
Yeah, you've had a very broad exposure to different game systems. Is ICRPG what you tend to play most now, or do you still kind of hop between a couple different systems?
Given the joys of real life, I don't really have much time for sort of as much time play as I used to. That's why I like ICRPGs because it's light. It's The prep time is pretty much next to nothing, and I can sort of do improv on the fly as well, which is really good. Oh, that was the other thing actually. When I ran the cons, my improv game skyrocketed because I was just running so much stuff, coming up against different people with different ideas, and I had to sort of, wing a lot of stuff. So that really sort of helped my improv exposure as well. But yeah, I just sort of chatted to a few friends online, and one had never played RPGs at all in his life, but he'd heard about it, and I was like, "Cool, let's do this." And he's like, "Okay," and he loved it. He had so much fun with it because he's actually coming to join my Lost Mines of Phandelver campaign. So that's starting this week. So that's going to be fun for him because he was like, I didn't know what to with the ICRPG game we ran. He was like, it was set in I don't know if you've heard of it, the Valkana Titan's Grave, Will Wheaton's YouTube channel.
No, I haven't. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, he did he was using the Fantasy Age system. He did a series called Valkana Titan's Grave. And also like a futuristic science fantasy setting kind of thing. And that's what I sort of based my game on. And I said to my friend, it's like, what do you want to play? He's like, ah. It's like, well, you like guitars, yeah? He's like, yeah. well, let's do a dwarf bard fighter who uses his axe as a weapon and a musical instrument. And and he was like, I am so on board with this. And so I built him a custom milestone called Battle Hymn, which, with ICRPG, you can, got the target numbers and stuff. If he made a charisma check and passed, he could reduce the target number of the room by 2. And so he even went to the point of he loved the idea so much. Anytime he used that ability, he found the diggy diggy hole. So anytime he
Uh,
used that ability, he played that song. He loved it so much.
that's hilarious.
Oh, it was great. It was so much fun. So yeah,
Yeah.
we with that. Yeah, no, yeah, go.
Oh, I was just gonna say with ICRPG too, it's nice that it is super easy to basically build anything custom.
Yeah, absolutely. Like another friend of ours who was playing an Ifrit wanted he's like fire. He basically, made a fire, uses fire, loves to play with fire. So during a session, he was like, I want to have something that enhances my firepower. I was like, all right, give me a minute. I just sort of sat for a minute and sort of thought about it. I was like, cool, here you go, have a fire roll. And that was the basis of the pyroclastic orb that I built, that I submitted for the competition. So it's his idea, but he was like, I want this. And it's like, it took me like, what, 5 minutes to make it, like, and implement it, and it worked.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same thing that I've done in my campaign that I'm running is also
Hmm.
ICRPG, and just the players have said like, I'm looking for this kind of thing, when we get to kind of our next level up, our next area. So then it's, yeah, sit down and all right, how do we make that mechanical? And it's usually not hard to get something at least basic out.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Like when we were playing it, the one thing that most of my players found was it was a touch too light for them, if that makes
sure.
sense, because they were so used to 5e, Pathfinder, and all those ones, like a lot of the other systems that have skill checks and that sort of stuff, so that they can sort of use that as a touch point to say how they want to do actions and stuff. Like that was the only sort of issue I had with ICRPG, I guess, is just sometimes the play, like it's more story driven than they're used to. And it's sort of saying, well, yeah, would your character be proficient in insight? Would your character be proficient in handling animals? Like it was kind of a bit trickier for them because they like to see it on their character sheet to say, tick this box. I have proficiency in animal handling. Cool. You can go convince that wolf not to attack us. That would be my only sort of downside with the RCRPG.
Yeah, if you're coming from an established group that is familiar with maybe a more complex game,
Mm.
I could see
Yeah.
that. I know, like for
Mhm.
my players are not super used to or aren't super familiar with like 5e or the really anything else. So coming in at ICRPG is just much quicker to get to the table, and then you could kind of graduate them to a more difficult system if you wanted to later on.
Yeah, you can use ICRPG as like, the gateway drug to get them hooked, get your hooks in, and then sort of go, hey, let's check out 5e, let's check out Fate, let's check out Pathfinder, let's check out, all the plethora of systems and stuff that are out there. What helped me a lot with my ICRPG experience was the Runehammer forums, and also his I think it was Khan's Kiln on YouTube, and also Hank's YouTube stuff as well. Because that man is crazy. He is insane, but so cool to listen to.
Yeah, I've actually had Hank and Kane on the podcast on previous episodes. I don't remember what episodes exactly they are, but it was
Yeah,
crazy
I
that I was
might
able
have.
to get Hank especially.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was a good score there, because yeah, I sort of maybe before this interview sort of backtracked through the catalog. Like I remember there was a couple of ICRPG stuff that you did, and went back. It's like, oh yeah, here they are. Cool.
Hank was very, very willing to like. I just shot him a message, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, let's set up a time. Let's do it."
Mm.
Which is,
Yeah,
for big creators is cool.
yeah, he's definitely a character. I'll give him that.
So do you find
Um,
yourself kind of as you're like moving forward, do you find yourself leaning a little bit away from ICRPG and maybe more into like 5e and some of those more
Uh,
G
finding I'm
systems?
taking I'm starting my 5e campaign this week, which I'm looking forward to. I've also backed another system called Cool Name Goes Here role playing game, and the creator of that one is looking to sort of do like a cinematic, and he's taken a lot of inspiration from. He wants the mechanics to be simple, sweet, fun, and more about getting the rules out of the way just so people can play.
Yep.
But I'm finding his mechanics and stuff that he's come up with very cool, and I can see a lot of inspiration from ICRPG, 5e, Pathfinder, all sort of Savage Worlds, Earthdawn. He's definitely sort of touched base with a lot of things. So he's just released the playtest rules for that this week, so I've got some reading to do.
That is cool. I have not heard of that one, but there's so many TTRPGs that are being, like indie published and stuff right now. It's hard to keep up with,
Oh, absolutely,
everything
yeah.
that's going on.
Yeah. Well, the fact he's managed to get his Kickstarter went really well. He's got a bunch of consulting designers, like a couple of the big ones in the RPG space. I think like Monica Marlowe, Owen Casey Stevens, JD, I think it was another one. And he sort of he'll send the submissions and they'll give him feedback and he'll go from there. And then he'll ask us in the Discord channel too what we think, because we're building it to get a community project. And when
Sure.
it gets released, it'll be released free for everyone to use under Creative Commons, I think his plan is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Because, yeah, that's the other thing. I want to try and get into writing a bit more, but you know how it goes with writing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm looking with ICRPG. Yes, I'm leaning away from it a little bit, but I'm pulling some of the elements I've learnt from it into my 5e game. Like the timers is definitely going to come into play. I'm not sure about target numbers yet. But one thing I did, like with the hackability of ICRPG, one thing I did do was create a hybrid player-facing roles rule set. So basically, what it was, instead of players just like instead of the GM rolling the attack and you sort of verse their defense attribute, I flipped it so that I said to them, okay, I'm attacking you with a sword. How are you defending it? And so one person would be like, I dodge out of the way. Okay, make a dexterity check, or I parry with my sword. All right, make a strength check. And they really seem to like the ability to sort of narrate the combat a bit more.
And how do you handle, in that case, the differences between like dodging out of the way versus, say, just kind of like relying on your armor to deflect the blow?
Well, what else I did with the armor is instead of armor adding to the roll, it actually reduced the damage taken. So, say if you had someone's attacking with a sword, you could go, okay, I'm going to dodge out of the way. You make a dex check, you fail the roll, you take weapon effort damage, but then the armor reduces that amount of damage taken, if that makes sense.
Yes.
In order to make it even easier, is they make the defense check and they use the room target as the defending number. That way, you sort of still using target numbers and stuff
Oh,
to,
sure.
yeah, really keep it tight and simple and clean. And then, of course, you can then start looking at our armor and also loot and stuff that would sort of reflect that. Like I had an item called an energy shield, which I built for it, which was it added two to your armor when activated, and if any attack against you was energy based, the roll was easy to defend. So it sort
Sure.
of everything sort of flowed into each other. It's like, okay, I've got energy shield being attacked with a laser. All right, make a dodge check, make a dexterity check, and it's easy because you got that energy shield. If can't get out of the way, the energy shield will still absorb some of the impact for you.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know if you have played much of the like Powered by the Apocalypse games at all.
I've heard of Powered by the Apocalypse. I haven't actually played it yet.
Okay. So I haven't played so Dungeon World is the main one that I
Hmm.
have played.
Yeah.
And that's very similar. Everything is player facing.
Mm.
The GM doesn't ever really roll anything. So just having that, like you said, a dodge mechanic essentially to get out of the way of attacks instead of rolling attacks. And you said that your players tended to like that more.
Yeah, they appreciated it enabled them to sort of maybe focus a bit more on the fact that they're really good with going with the same example. Dex is their main stat, like that's their biggest thing they're pushing. That's what the character is. It's what it does. And now suddenly they can sort of really use that to capitalize on that. And it didn't feel like it was breaking the game at all. Like there was no sort of power gaming going on where everything was all of a sudden about dex, 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 dex. They were still doing other stuff, but the fact that they had a primary attribute that they full focused on and they could use more and more creatively, it worked, and they were happy with it.
My next question was, did the players then get more creative with how they were trying to get out of the way of attacks or
Absolutely.
sequences of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if there was like a magic spell coming at them, they could dodge out of the way. If they felt like their wisdom was like, so if the magic spell was coming out, the wizard or sorry, cleric at the party who had a pretty good wisdom score was like going to basically step in, he was just going to resist the spell. And so he's able to use his wisdom check more effectively instead of just using a defense score, if that makes sense. But yeah,
Yes.
they did enjoy the ability to make it more because it made it more fun. They could come up with more creative solutions to the problem.
And is that something that you are planning to kind of bring over to your 5e game as well?
I don't know how to. I don't really know how to do
It
player
might
facing roles in 5e.
it might be a little
Uh,
tricky.
yeah, I do have a fair bit of like because I'm Pathfinder and stuff. I know sort of the D20 mechanics can make it a bit trickier. If I could find a way of doing it, maybe. But also, I'm kind of trying to keep this one pure, if that makes sense for now, just until we get settled with the group, and we'll just go from there. If we get halfway through the campaign, go like, hey guys, do you want to try this new sort of mechanic? I was like, yeah, cool, let's give it a whirl. We'll give it a whirl for a few sessions and see how we go.
Yeah, that makes sense. 5e is a little bit, especially if you're trying to run just more straight from the book, you'd have to do a lot more work in terms of enemies and stuff probably to
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
switch
Like
that stuff out.
because I'm running the Lost Mines of Vandelver Shattered Obelisk, that the new adventure that came out I think early last year, and I'm running that pretty much pure book. The only tweak I'm doing is using the Eberron campaign setting. I'm just basically smashing those two together, and yeah, just going from there and running everything as close to the book as I can, mainly because it's easier and I don't really have much time sort of to sit down and sort of homebrew everything. I'm trying to keep my prep time sort of to a minimum this time round because that was one lesson I did learn as I did over prep and over focus on my last camp the that Titan's Grave campaign I did, which went for about a year, 2 years. There was a few times that my partner was like, look, you're over prepping here, you're stressing yourself out, you're not having fun, you're burning yourself out. Let's just sort of take a few steps back and just chill. So that's what I'm trying to do this time because GM burnout is not fun.
Yeah, burnout of any kind is not fun.
Mm.
So, as far as like going through a module and trying to run that, like what is your approach to prepping from the module? Do you read a bunch of it in advance, or do you kind of take it chunk by chunk as the players get through it? What does that look like for you?
Well, it looks like I'll like read the entire like what I did for the last campaign was a Titan's Grave Iron Gods combo. So the Iron God Adventure Path from Pathfinder, I used that as my main inspiration. What I did was I read the entire not I skimmed the book just so I can get a sort of broad understanding of what's to expect and stuff like that. And then I sort of broke it down into sessions of and then encounters. So I use Lazy DM's prep. I was using a lot of his techniques and some of Hank's ideas of instead of using like running off a map, I did like 5 scenes per session, and each scene would be like a critical battle or a critical moment in the campaign. And that enabled me sort of get straight into the action straight away. None of the fiddly sort of, oh, we've got this marching order down this tunnel. Okay, move left, move right, move left, move right. I just was like, not having that. It doesn't jive with ICRPG. It's all about getting to the action straight away, getting to those cinematic moments, getting to everyone places, everyone have fun. And that's where I took most of my prep was just there, looking at what the book said, taking like the key moments out of it, because a lot of the adventure paths in Path for Paizo's adventure paths, whilst they're great, they do have a lot of like XP fillers that you don't really need. It's like, why have you got this combat here? This makes no sense. Why have you got this creature here? This makes no sense for the story. Gone. Why is this bit of the story here? What's this got to do with the main quest? Nothing. Okay, gone. Like some people might be completionists and want to experience the whole thing, but my group was they loved it. They were looking forward to it each month. because I knew it was going to be simple, clean, and just sit down, have a few beers, and roll some dice and kill things.
Yeah, especially like you mentioned, having a tighter schedule of when you get to play, kind of grinding through an adventure when you're not doing a whole lot isn't a ton of
Yeah,
fun. When,
yeah,
if we can just fast forward to the fun parts,
pretty
within
much.
reason,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like some of the downtime stuff we did sort of like off session because we
Hmm.
had a Discord channel and stuff. So I was like, look, if you guys got any questions or if you want to sort of talk about what your character might do between, we're traveling from one town to another. Is there anything you want to do? Do you want to progress your milestone? Do you want to build some equipment? That sort of thing.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is easy to handle outside of the session.
Absolutely, yeah.
So as far as the scenes go, I don't know if I'm super familiar with that method, although I think I kind of inadvertently prep in the same kind of a similar way. How do you handle for, I guess, unexpected player actions?
I just sort of roll with it and just go from there, pretty much. Like, just for example, the way I prep, like one of the scenes I'm just reading through now. There is one that I can. Yeah, it's just like one of the things was they had to rescue some rebels from a base behind that was in an inn. And all I've written down for the scene notes I had is rescue rebels, target number 14. This is the scene that they'll do. It's got the threat of the three rebel guardians, one heart plus two to all checks. So that's the threat. The treat was they got to rescue someone. That was the whole point. And then the timer I had on there was four rounds or more guards appear. So I had a fixed timer. The threat was the robots, which I had like, this is their health, this is what their special ability is, and that's all I did. And then I said, okay, guys, this is the situation. Well, how are you going to fix it? Well, the ball's in your court. So that way, I'm not fully dictating what I'm not railroading them. I'm putting the sort of the story. Like I'm giving them the broad strokes. They can fill in the blanks.
But they still have a pretty solid goal that they're going for, so you're not
Yeah,
necessarily going to be thrown off too much by
no,
it.
it's just like, yeah, I'm like they won't think too far. They won't think too far outside of the box, but you know, there are players and there are players who will come up with some completely wacky left of center solution. It's like, okay, yep, that works. Give me like 5 minutes so I can figure out how to bring it into the game. It's just like that was another big thing I learned going back to my con days was the yes and approach. Like I was always about yes and that the big improv moment for me was learning and understanding that was because I rarely said no to players. It's just like, yes, we could do that. And yes, we can, yes, and yep. Okay. You want to shoot that guy? Cool. Go. Yes, you could jump off that cliff, but this is liable to be a consequence. Do you still want to do it? So that way I'm still sort of saying, yes, you can do it. I'm not saying no straight away. And that sort of helps propel the story forward as well.
Right, and letting them know that there may be a consequence for something
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
just like,
It's
you can try.
instead of just saying no, you can't jump off the cliff. It's like, yeah, you can, and that's fine. And screw it, I'm still gonna do it anyway. And they ended up rolling like, insanely well. And it's like, okay, okay, you took a big risk, here's your big reward.
Feel like a lot of times when they take a big risk, they usually roll like super high.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Although
You,
there was yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say, if you tell them that they can attempt a roll, it's probably gonna be a critical success. So,
That's true. One with that ICRPG campaign, one of the highlights for it for me was there was a point they were talking to. There was a basic god, there was a avatar of chaos, and it came in to the players in disguise and said, "Look, I want to help you guys out. You guys seem cool. Um, if you're willing to sort of worship me, I'll grant you this boon." And the boons I gave them, all of them said afterwards, because I took them like one by one aside separately in a private conversation, so no one else knew what each other was being offered.
hmm.
And each of them said after the fact, two of them accepted it, and to their detriment later on, it bit them in the butt later on so hard it was hilarious. But all of them were like, the choice, like that was a very hard choice. And I was very proud of all of them because they didn't just sort of look at the mechanical benefits and they actually looked at it from a role playing perspective, from a character perspective, which was really cool. The only downside was it because it was an avatar of chaos. The two that accepted it became basically tainted by chaos, so they got a special milestone which I created for it. So anytime they rolled a certain number, basically like wild magic from
Oh, yep.
5e, wild
Yep.
magic table, basically that would fire off randomly. If they rolled a two, I'd roll on the table, something would happen. But because if they did anything sort of in furtherance of the chaos of the Avatar of Chaos's goals, that would increase. So it started at one, went to two,
Oh,
three.
okay.
So anytime they rolled, say, if their chaos value got to five, anytime they rolled five or lower, it would fire off. And so about halfway through, three-quarters way through the campaign, one of the guys was like, "I want to stop doing this because this is, not working for me." It's okay. So we built a whole side quest in for him getting basically redemption. And
Sure.
so he was able to lock his chaos into a certain point and not proceed it any further. But he couldn't like remove it straight away. But I was able to do that because ICRPG was so easy just to go, yep, cool, here's a milestone, cool, here's a table, go. It just made it so easy.
That's a neat way to handle the corruption mechanic too, of just
Yeah.
slowly
It
adding
was
a number to your minimum roll or whatever, so things start happening
mm.
more and more frequently. I like that.
Yeah, it's just like it was just on you if it surged, you rolled on the chaos table and had stuff like, minimum effort. So the next time you rolled damage, you rolled minimum damage. But then there was positive ones too, like maximum effort, where you rolled max damage. But then there was another one you would hallucinate, you would repel other people, you'd attract other people, turn mute. Or one of the ones which was you had to be there was basically lemons started falling from the sky and filled the square you're in. Random fun.
I love
And
it.
because it applied to any check, when they were trying to sneak past a guard, one of the guys who was cursed failed the roll, but then also rolled on the table and actually did the attract one. So pulled. Not only did he fail the roll, he pulled the guard towards into the combat as well. And so instead of them being able to surprise him, and it's just like, dude, come on. It's like, hey, the dice willeth and the dice taketh away. You chose this.
This is your punishment.
Yeah,
I'm sure that
absolutely.
added some really I like that's a good example of just kind of
Yeah.
a funny consequence
Hmm.
to their role play.
Yeah. Because that was all sort of my experience. Like I created, oh no, I created, I shouldn't say that. I noticed on the Runehammer forum someone talking about like progressive milestones, where basically you start with it's like you start with something minor, but if you fulfill certain conditions every session or over certain sessions, you would gain more abilities, kind of thing, with it. So I each offered one of those to my players, and everyone took one. And yeah, they really love the fact that hey, during a downtime session or even in a session, okay, with your progressive milestones, how are you going with it? Where you at? And I just use the hearts to track how they were going. And sort of once they got to a certain like once they got like a heart's worth of effort to go towards that milestone, the next stage unlocked. And that worked. That I found that really sort of gave them more role playing opportunities and just a chance for sort of give them a bit more variety in what they can do with their milestones and stuff.
I'd like to talk about that more actually. So
Yeah.
when they were making effort towards kind of like upgrading these milestones,
Mhm.
did they have to make like a certain roll and then roll effort, or did you just let them roll a certain type of effort when they decided to use
It
their
did.
action for it?
It depended on what happened during, like, for one example, one of the progressive milestones I had was, where is it? It was called Nine Tails. So one of the characters was playing a kitsune. And so as they sort of, and each element represented a different tail. And so at the end of the session, I was like, okay, what did you do to further your milestone this session? And they were like, well, we went swimming. And that would start unlocking my water tail. I'm like, cool, okay, roll because you were swimming. You didn't use any sort of tools, like any breathing equipment. You were just naturally swimming. It'd just be basic effort, and he rolled a d4. But then when he was like, but then we're like, well, and what about your shadow tail? And it's like, well, I've got these boots, I've got this cloak. I was sort of skulking around, looking for this guy. Okay, and okay, so because you used equipment, roll the tool effort. So it was just it wasn't any sort of action. It was just the effort rolls, no action checks, sort of thing.
Sure. It was just did you fulfill this thing or not during the
Yeah,
session, and then
pretty
the
much. Yeah, it was.
associated effort roll.
I even said to them from the get go, it's like I am not tracking any of. I am not sort of keeping an eye out and doing any sort of secret ticks. Well, there was one exception, but that's another story. I'm not keeping an eye on how you're progressing with your milestones. At the end of each session, we're going to have like a debrief sort of thing, and you guys can tell me how you progress your milestone if you did. If you did, hey, it's not on me. It's your character. It's up to you how you want to progress through with these milestones.
And so was it just every time they filled a heart worth of effort, then they would unlock the
Yeah,
next level of it?
yeah, yeah. For example, like one of the ones was like the water ones. Once they got unlocked, they basically could swim and breathe underwater permanently. Like it's got a permanent buff, and it's at the end of the day, like most of the stuff like for the Ninetales one, it was like you can swim and breathe underwater. You can gain a climb speed. You can control the temperature around you. You can hover a foot off the ground. Like they weren't game breaking things, just little sort of minor things that just made it fun.
And in that case, did you track hearts for each one of those separately, like the
Yeah,
water versus the air?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I used Kanka as my world build as my campaign manager, and I just had it set up with attributes like in one of the posts to say, okay, at the end of each session, okay, this character who's got the nine tails, they put in this much effort. Okay, and their water thing is now at 5 of 10 hearts, or five, about 50%.
And then so for that one, that character would have had like 9. Did the other characters have a similar amount, or did they have like fewer
Um,
things that they were working towards
yeah, one of
at a
them
time?
had what was called elemental ammo as a progressive milestone. So, but their one was any time at the end of the session, they would probably roll weapon effort more than anything else because each deals the nine. I had 9 elements, and each did a damage type and a status effect. And he was like, at the end, and I said to him, okay, yep, you used a couple which shots did you use today? And he's like, well, I used earth, air, and water. Okay, cool. Roll weapon effort and started filling it up. And once it was filled, was it progressive? No, it wasn't progressive. I lie. I'm sorry. That's right. No, instead it was progressive because it unlocked a status effect afterwards. So, for example, air, once he sort of started using the air element enough, he unlocked the debuff status effect of deafened. So he could deafen creatures if he wanted to instead of dealing damage.
Sure. I like that concept. I have my players in my current game have kind of a condition that they're dealing with that may
Hmm.
grant them some additional powers. So I'm kind of trying to figure out how to maybe give them a way to, if they want, focus on it and hone it as a skill. But if they don't want to, they can just completely ignore it also. So I might
Yeah, progressive
steal a little
milestones
bit
might
of
be a
this.
way to do that. Yeah, go for it. I can always share the docs with you later if you like. Although I think my pièce de résistance was this same character was a bioengineer, so his whole idea was he had a gun and he wanted to shoot people, but he also wanted to shoot people to heal them, which has always been a bone of contention in any RPG you play. Um, so we came up with a concept. I gave him what I call necromantic batteries, which if he used in combination with like he had like a light detector eyepiece, so shooting players was easy. He could shoot them and give them temporary hit points. I was like, cool. The downside was if he when the players went down to 0 hit points and started dying, it was an automatic hit. The only problem was if he used that ammo on them when they were unconscious and dying, they would start transforming into undead. So each time they were shot, they basically progressed further in it was like a disease, sort of a
Sure.
disease track. So it had good things and bad things, but so necromantic transformation, if you revive from near death from a necromantic type effect, the ammo, you increase your stage value of your necromantic transformation by 1. So stage 1, no effect. Stage 2, you actually gain the die hard milestone. So instead of D6s, I think I went up to D8s. But then stage 3 was no effect. But then stage 4, because you're slowly becoming more and more undead, you couldn't actually heal naturally. So you couldn't sort of recover hit points yourself. You had to sort of take potions or some other way to heal,
Sure.
and so on and so forth until number 10, whereas you become undead because you've absorbed so much necromantic energy, it's transformed you completely. I think one of the players got to stage 8, where it was magical healing hurts you, but non-magical healing can still heal you. So if it was like a spell from like a divine source that was trying to heal you, it would, it's positive energy, so it would hurt.
Sure.
Whereas it was like like a healing potion or a stim or something like that, it was fine.
Makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah,
there's
that's
it's
definitely
just
a
that.
consequence, though.
Oh yeah, it's just like there are some good, some bad, some good, some bad. So there were a few times they were weighing up the risks of, do you shoot me or do you not? Because if you shoot me, I get this, but then later on, if you do it again, I'll get this. It's like, yeah, again, it puts the onus back on the players of, you can do it, but there'll be consequences, and you can choose to whether this is a good consequence or a bad consequence.
It sounds like with most of the stuff that you've designed, there's always kind of a give and take to each thing, whether it's a some benefit with a consequence. Do you find that generally your players are receptive to that and engage in that, like,
Yeah, no,
trying to
absolutely.
think of the
Like
wording?
I might, like, yeah, no, like there was a power gamer in the group who did have a few misgivings, I suppose, of the fact that he couldn't sort of optimize every single thing he had. But as a general, in a general sort of way, everyone else was just like, no, it's good because it's balanced, and that's what I was aiming for. So I wanted a balanced, fair game where no one was overpowered, no one was taking the spotlight in combat. So not everyone had to rely on each other still to sort of get stuff done. They couldn't just go, okay, this guy's OP, he can just go in, sneak here, stab, stab, done. It's like, yeah, instead it's just, yeah, he could sneak in, but then something could happen and his chaos thing could fire and you guys are screwed.
Yeah, I like the balance of
Hmm.
that. I had a question and I kind of lost it.
That's
Is
okay.
why.
But yeah, that's
Um,
even when like I built one or two 5e subclasses for a few friends in one of the like in my first 5e game I ever played. We did the Tyranny of Dragons Tyranny of Dragons adventure, and a friend of mine, my partner, wanted to play a druid who had the Circle of the Dragon. And I was like, well, I haven't built for 5e before, but surely it couldn't be that hard. And that was a mistake. But even like I sort of sat down with the GM and was like, look, this is what he wants. I know you don't have much experience because it was the GM's first time GMing too. And so we sort of sat down collaboratively and it's like worked it all out. And it's like there was a lot of, given we didn't want it too overpowered because druids are overpowered in 5e anyway. But then we didn't want to get outshone by the other two power gamers. But we ended up finding a good balance, which was good. I think that's the key is that's the hardest thing I think with a lot of GMs and players, or GMs and especially, writing their own stuff and homebrewing is trying to find that sweet spot where it's not too beneficial to the players, but it's not too detrimental to the players either. Because at the end of the day, it's a collaborative story you're telling, and you don't want to sort of have them feel cheapened or betrayed by the experience.
have you had like homebrew stuff that you've done where you've had to kind of roll it back and say, okay, this is completely either stronger or way weaker than I had originally planned. Let's roll it back to something else, or to have you to modify things.
The Circle of the Dragon subclass for the Druid thing was definitely one of them. Because the first time I went in not really understanding 5e, how 5e subclasses are built, and I built it like a Pathfinder archetype. And so it had so much stuff in it. And the GM was like, dude, this is going to be too OP. This is going to be too much. Roll it back. So we rolled it back and tried again and again and again. It took it until about level 6, I think it was, before it was in a place where it was, yep, this is good. This is happy. This works.
Yeah, looking through, I haven't played any of the Pathfinder games, but I have looked
Mhm.
through their like character builder and stuff, and they just have a lot of options from a character
Um, the
building perspective.
Absolutely. Pathfinder, the joke was you need a degree in Pathfinder to Pathfinder because it is they've taken a lot of it, because it's based on 3.5, and that's very rules intensive of figuring every single nuance out. It's very in depth. And even with second edition, even it's still, I haven't played second edition yet, but from what I've seen, building your character is a process. But in game, the podcast I listen to, all the live plays and stuff, it flows so smoothly. But I don't know if that's because of editing or because the system is that well balanced. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be hard to say.
Absolutely.
Do you tend to play most of your games online or do you play in person?
I prefer to play in person. But if I have to, I can do online. I find that the online experience isn't as rewarding for me because I feed off the other players. Like I pick up off their visual cues, how that their body reactions in person. Whereas online, it's so hard, and it's so hard to keep everybody engaged online as well. So I try to do a bit of both. Like I do run the occasional game in person at my local gaming store, but most of the time it is online using like Roll20 and stuff.
Yeah, the next question I was going to ask is what tools do you use if you're online?
We
So
did,
Roll20, is
yeah.
there anything else that you use to help?
I've used, pardon me, used Roll20, Discord, Kanka is my world builder. Tried using World Anvil, but every time I open that screen, that first sort of welcome screen, I just get hit with everything I can do on the screen. I'm just like, no, it's just too much. It's just too overwhelming. I tried using Table Plot for a while, but that was a bit too simple and the developer for that has sort of not developed much for that for a while, so I'm back to Roll20.
What was that world building one called?
Kanka.
I haven't
It's
heard of that
Kanka.
one. I've heard of World Anvil, but
Yeah, if you look up kanka.io, once we're all done, I'll shoot you a message with all the links for all my stuff, and you can have a look if you want.
oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, the Kanka one is it's a scaled down version of World Anvil. It's a lot more
Sure.
focused on, what would you like to use? What do you want your players to see? That sort of thing. So that's helped me immensely because I tried using, Google Docs, Excel spreadsheets, books. Campaign management is a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I've been using Notion just for a lot of stuff.
Oh, I use Obsidian as well, actually.
Oh yeah, so Obsidian and Notion are very similar.
Yeah.
I still get lost in my notes. So
Yeah. All the standard one, I'll do a session, cool, I'll make some notes. But then when I come back a month later, I look at my notes and I'm going, what does that mean? What does this mean? What happened? Okay, cool, let's just do this and just hope that's correct. And most of the time it is. Occasionally I get pulled up for something I missed, but everyone's chill. So it's not like they're nothing major has gone wrong because I miss.
that almost goes back to the scenes thing. When I prep, I
Mhm,
almost try to prep my entire session in like one page so that I don't
mhm.
have to like try to jump around a lot and find stuff because that's when I get lost and flustered.
Oh yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like my session notes, like for the a whole session, I'll put all the scenes if I can fit it in one page. And because if there's any sort of box text I need to read, I'll make sure I include that. If there's any sort of like speeches or NPCs I need to worry about, I'll make sure I try to include them as well. Because that's one of the things I found is when I use the adventure piles or published adventures, the box text is actually really handy to have because it's actually, I'll admit it, look, their writing is so much better than mine. And so using what they say is so much better.
So back a little bit on those
Mhm,
scenes. Do you tend to have those scenes? Is that like, say you prep 5 scenes? Is that typically
mhm.
like you expect these scenes to happen in order, or like these are the next kind of 5 scenes that could happen depending on what the players do?
Bit of both. It depends on what we're doing. Like if it is a narrative session, it is pretty much a one, two, three, four, five. But if it's more of a sandbox session, I suppose is the right word, where they're like exploring a
Hmm.
cave, like a cave complex, I'm more like, okay, they start here, they'll definitely do this one first, but then they could go, so they'll definitely scene one is definitely going to happen. That's a guarantee. But then are they going to go to scene two or scene three? And then they sort of branch it out around from there. So they could go to scene two, then scene five, then scene four, then scene three, then back to scene two, and the cave is complete. The complex is complete, sorry.
Yep.
I'm still sort of finalizing. Like I've only really used that technique once or twice so far because I'm so used to having a big sprawling map complex with with the big map and everyone stepping through all the caves and stuff like that on the map. And it's like, wait, stop here. Yep, check for traps, check for traps, check for traps. Nope, okay, check for traps, check. It was just grinding out too much,
Yeah.
taking too much time for the road, being paranoid as buggery because he doesn't trust me, which is fair because I'm a GM, and as you know, GMs are evil. It's like, no, we
When the
just like to be
DM
police.
smiles,
Like,
it's already too late.
yeah, pretty much. Done that once or twice. Every now and then I might, fool them, but most of the time they know if they see me grin, it's just like, okay, I clearly said the wrong thing or I stepped in the wrong spot. And it's like, thank you, you just activated the sub boss, which I was hoping you would do because he's got this wicked cool ability that I want to test and it's going to mess with you hard.
Right before they can kill it in 2 turns,
Yes, pretty
usually.
much. There was one thing actually I forgot to mention back in my RPG experience in where I live in Australia, down in Warrnambool's a country town. There was a local board gaming group. I approached them to say, "Hey, do you guys mind if I run like an RPG day, like once every couple months?" They're like, "Dude, what do you need? How many tables?" They were so keen for me to do it. And so every couple months, I found a couple of the GMs in the area, and I said, "Guys, this is what we're doing. You can run whatever you want. I don't care. I'm just the facilitator here." The final session was I said to the group, "I've got a surprise for you guys. We're going to do a multi-table 5e one shot." And they're like, "What?" So yeah, I found there was a D&D 5e one shot that was designed for multi-tables. Are you familiar with multi-table events and stuff?
I've talked to people about them a little bit, but I've never been a part of one or run one or anything.
Yeah, because basically it was 5 tables, each running. It was like an overarching campaign of defeat the Dragon Lich, and each table was a team that had a specific task to do, and there were different levels at each table. And I was the game overlord, I suppose. And I just sat back, and if there's anybody had any questions about a ruling, I was like, "Yep, this is what's happening. This is what's happening." And there was one or two times there where there was like a teleportation effect, and I said, "Okay, guys, stop. So and so stepped on this teleportation pad. So and so stepped on this teleportation pad. You guys swap." And like, what? It's like, yep, you up off that table. You up off that table. You guys are now playing in these teams. And they were just. And then the final, we got to like about 10, 11 o'clock at night, and we got there at the final boss, this big dragon, and it was just effectively a conga line of death because one moment more experienced GMs wanted to take the dragon fight and like, cool, take it. And about halfway through, we sort of decided that everybody who's still alive can, anytime someone dies at the table, someone else can sub in, bring character. And so it was just a conga line of character deaths, but they did it at the end. And everyone was like, "That is the best experience I've ever had." I'm like, "You're welcome."
So after
Uh,
their characters died, did they all kind of
mhm.
like congregate around the final
Everyone was,
table of whoever
yeah,
was?
everyone was just cheering them on, offering suggestions, all that sort of stuff. I think it was a bit of the GM who ran it was a bit of a cocky kind of know-it-all kind of like he reckoned he was like, "I'm the best, blah 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 blah," and it kind of put him in his place a little bit, which was good. So it was a bit of a, you wanted it, here you go. So it was a good sort of moment for him too.
A little bit of growth there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, they were like, "When can we do this again?" And it's like, "We should do this soon." And then COVID hit and just
Oh,
destroyed. Yeah, and that
yeah.
just yeah, killed any momentum we had.
That is a bummer because that, I mean, that the way you described it, it sounds like it would be a really good time. So,
Oh, it was. Everyone had so much fun. Like I wasn't expecting it to work as well as it did. If I could do it again, I would in a heartbeat. But the prep time for that was insane because I had to sort of help, sit down with the GMs. I wanted to sit down with the GMs. We sort of did the overall thing. We talked about what we wanted to do. Then we talked to the other players, got them on board, got what they wanted to do. And yeah, it was just from an administrative perspective, very complicated. But as soon as the dice at the table, all bets are off, as it usually does.
mhm. Scheduling and the coordination between how many tables did you have?
I think it was 5 tables at the end, 4 or 5 tables. So I had
Sure.
about pretty much the entire board game, the group community, all of them showed up to play that one because most of them hadn't really played any sort of RPG before, but they were intrigued by the concept of about 30 people playing one story and different elements of the story and stuff.
That would be a incredible start to your first RPG. Just Yeah, we're just
Oh,
gonna do a
yeah,
multi-table one shot with
yeah,
30 people.
yeah. It's like, welcome. You'll never experience anything like this again.
Yeah, the best one
It's
is
like
the
I
first one.
very much that is very
uh,
much the case. It's just like I would love to go to PaizoCon. I think at PaizoCon they do it. They do a multi-table event every year, and that has about over 100 people doing the same thing. So it's a multi-table, but over 100 people
that's
doing the
crazy.
one sort of. Yeah, it's insane. It is insane.
Very cool though if you can be a participant in that and that they can
Oh, even if just
coordinate
as a
that. That's
player,
cool.
yeah, as a player or a GM. From what I've heard, they have basically they take over the one of the halls in honestly can't remember where it is, and they actually have runners. So they have runners between tables who will run the results up to like a big overall like a big table at the end of the hall, and then they do announcements of like, the Alpha Strike team has completed 50% of their task. Beta team has failed at their task, and that sort of stuff. It's yeah, it's insane.
That sounds so cool.
Hmm.
Well, we are getting about to time here, so as we
Hmm.
wrap up, is there any parting words you would like to share for new or experienced game masters?
At the end of the day, have fun, prep less, do your research, and just have a good time because it's not how it used to be, where it used to be the GM versus the players. It's all about the GM working with the players to do an awesome collaborative story, even if it is just throwing some dice and having some beer or having a few drinks. It's about having fun.